our presentation by Mr. Garside, 5-year forecast.
Madam President, members of the board, it's that time of year this is the update of the 5-year forecast that was originally passed in October by state law. School districts in the state of Ohio had to pass the forecast in October and then in May. The October one can be passed in November, but we're going to probably stay on that schedule of October. First slide, please. Time frame that this covers is fiscal year 2021 through 2025. The graph you see up there right now, the blue represents revenue, red represents expenditures, and green represents cash balances. We've always talked about our cash balances needing to be in a target from 3 to 6 months of active operating expenditures, and we're well within those targets in this forecast. One thing I'd like to point out that in 2025 we do have a positive cash balance, which is a good thing. But I do want to note that the expenditures do outpace revenues in future years. So those are things we're going to have to watch. One thing about that, though, is I've said this many, many times that I put the forecast together in a conservative manner. So I expect revenues to come in a little bit better. I expect expenditures to come a little bit lower, and that will improve our overall financial situation. But I think it's been the pleasure of the board to do it that way, to make sure that there's no unforeseen hiccups in the future or anything. If there's something that comes up that's like when the pandemic hit, we didn't know what was going to happen. We had that cushion to make sound decisions instead of rash, fast decisions. So we were in a good spot when that all hit, that we could really take a step back and look where we were and make some decisions accordingly. So go ahead and move to the next slide. I'm going to go through some highlights that I think are important for you to know as a board member and also as a community member out there, those that are listening. I mentioned this in the last forecast in October, but we had a little situation with Mount Carmel Health, the new hospital that was put in. They are a tax exempt entity, but had not filed their paperwork yet to get that exemption, and received a tax bill, paid that tax bill, and the amount that was received by Southwestern City Schools was about $7 million. I anticipated in the forecast in October that would be repaid with this first half settlement in 2021. That did not happen yet, so it will all come out of the second half settlement in 2021, which is in next fiscal year. So I just did some adjusting on when that would actually happen, but it's still accounted for. That's a pretty material item, so we wanted to keep an eye on that to make sure that we were accounting for it properly. There are still 2 unapproved state biennium budgets within this forecast. That budget process is moved to the Senate. Hopefully, there's a fair school funding plan out there that is beneficial to the school district and to many school districts throughout the state of Ohio, and we're a proponent of that. We passed a resolution in support in the fall, and hopefully that is something that is going to move forward for all school districts in the state of Ohio. Currently, our state funding is about 56% of our overall operating revenue, so we're going to be watching this closely. The forecast projects flat revenue. Do I believe that we will have flat revenue in the future? Probably not. We're probably going to get some increases, but I don't want to be out on the edge with that. So as soon as we know that, you'll get those updates, and the October forecast will have a biennial budget in place, and we'll be able to put some more solid sound figures in there for that. So definitely something we're keeping an eye on. Also, wanted to point out there are a few things that are noteworthy, I believe. We have quite a few funds that are coming in that, first of all, there's something called Student Wellness and Success Funds that came with the last biennial budget, and we received about $12 million of Student Wellness and Success Funds. Those were, and the state even recognized this and said, these were dollars that you would have normally gotten in your state revenues, but we're going to make you account for them in a separate fund. Because they're accounted for in a separate fund, they're not showing up on this forecast. So you'll see some decreases in expenditures that look a little funny, but it's because those dollars are being accounted for in a state fund, which is not included in the forecast. So that's that's something that looks a little strange. The other one is the elementary and secondary schools emergency relief funds, the Esser funds that you've heard about. That we have 2 allocations that we know what they are, 1 and 2. 3, we have projections, but we haven't had an allocation dropped into our bucket to be available to us yet. We're going through the planning processes on how we think we should spend those funds. But what is to note about those 2 is those also won't be accounted for in the 5-year forecast. So you'll see some adjustments. We've done some things to account for those, and then the assumptions to the forecast, you can read the details on those and really get down and dirty with that. But I'll explain that a little bit more on the expenditure side. On the expenditure side, those reductions to expenditures were due to the student wellness and success funds and the Esser funds. We partnered with the ESC for our student wellness and success funds. They have provided services to the districts for physical and mental health services, OT, PT, psych services. They've been doing that. We've been a partner with them for a long time. So we're using those student wellness and success funds to keep those programs going. So they've been a great partner with that. The Esser funds, we had the Virtual Learning Academy. It was one big piece where we'd use those Esser funds to fund that. That was not something that we've had in the past. We moved quite a few staff out of buildings into virtual space, provided not only the ability to do that, but the staffing to do that. So all those pandemic related expenses that are Esser funds have been carved out of the general fund. The monies that we were spending out of the general fund before were moved to the Esser fund. So that freed up some balances in our general fund. Another note, just to stick on that slide for just a second more, within the forecast, for the first fiscal year we're working on right now is fiscal year 2021. It's the one that's ending in June. Next year's fiscal 2022, those are the numbers that you'll see kind of going into our budget for next school year. That's the budget you approve at the June 28th board meeting that we have in the morning. I have all the documents ready and we'll be able to approve that budget, and also have all our documents ready that I can take to the county budget office to make sure we're in compliance with all the rules and regulations that are set forth for that. So I just want to make you aware that when we're putting these forecasts together, yes, we are working on the current fiscal year, and that budget's already been put in place, but those amounts and those dollars all kind of matriculate through the system to create a budget for the next fiscal year that's coming up. Okay, go ahead and move to the next slide. We had a triennial update this year. Property values and property house sales and just everything's been going really crazy. This is a slide I think I first introduced this in 2018. Some board members that are here weren't here at that time, and I think it's an important thing to know because this is a very confusing thing on how Ohio taxes its class 1 property, which is residential and agricultural, and properties altogether for that matter. What you see up there is a graph, and the blue represents property values, assessed property values for class 1 only. This is residential and agricultural. We really, as a district, don't have a lot of agricultural values, so pretty much these are homes that our community folks live in. So the blue represents the homes that our parents and community members live in. The red line is effective millage rate. So millage rates are passed. We have 61 voted mills. We don't collect 61 voted mills because as values go up and down, millage rate adjusts. So what this shows, in 2009, the reason why I chose 2009, anybody remember what happened way back in 2009? That was our last operating levy. So that's a long time ago. We've done a great job by staying off the ballot for operating dollars since 2009. So if you look back at that time, in 2009, we had about $1.8 billion of assessed value. And as you watch that move across, in 2011, you see a dip. That was the housing market crash. You see that dip down, it stays down pretty low until 2017, it rises back up again. That was when the full county reappraisal happened. And that happens, every 6 years. In the interim, you put in a triennial update. That's what happened in 2020. Housing markets is going strong. We have a lot of construction, a lot of things going on. That bumped up to this now over 2.2 billion in assessed value. So it's grown quite a bit. So it's not only gone back to where it was, but it's exceeded that amount. Now, what's that mean? What's that have to do with what's it do to your effective millage rate? You can see as we passed that levy in 2009, it kind of bumped our millage rate up. And when the housing values went down, the millage rate went up to collect roughly the same amount of money. And then when it went back up, it went back down. So there's a direct correlation to values increasing and millage or decreasing and the millage rate going up and down. I've talked about this for a long, long time. I think the next slide really illustrates on how this is not the excitement level in the room. That's not that flat line is not the excitement level in the room. That flat line represents the tax dollars we collect from Class 1 property from that same time frame, 2010 through 2020. So you can see there's no big ebbs and there's no big spikes and decreases and increases. You see that just remaining flat. And that's how property taxes work in the state of Ohio. I think this is a really good graphical representation to show you how that works and to really, make you think about that. So when you hear from folks in the community or just statewide even, this is a good thing to be able to show them or tell them or talk to them about, because it is important to note that, it is a big piece of our revenues. It's a big piece of what we do. But without putting additional going to the voters and saying, we would like you to do this, we're not going to get a whole lot of revenue without doing that. So I just think it's important, especially for you were not here for that last presentation. So I thought that would be good to point that out again. And I think it is valuable information overall. Be gearing up for the next forecast in October. We will be working hard to get those numbers together, keep you up to date on the status of the state funding, state budget, and what's going on with that, and just make sure we got our finger on the pulse with that.